I've seen a lot of effective leaders and leadership styles from my time as a Boy Scout, West Point cadet, Army officer, corporate officer, business owner, and pastor of a vibrant, which you can translate as small, church. However, some of the best leadership lessons, and certainly the best lessons about mentors and mentees that I've ever learned over the past 20 years, is by being involved in the practice and cultivating of growing bonsai trees. Yes, bonsai trees, a horticultural art of growing miniature trees in containers that originally started in China and was made popular by Mr. Miyagi and the Karate Kid franchise 1, 2, 3, and the next Karate Kid franchise. Now, who knows why anyone ignites with passion to learn something, to demonstrate mastery of something, to become a leader and mentor? You have your own passions. I chose bonsai. Maybe bonsai chose me. I became a bonsai groupie over 20 years ago at Japan Fest at Stone Mountain. Now, among Japanese food vendors and arts, there was a huge tent with the words "Full Moon Bonsai" on it. I was mesmerized completely. Trees that were so small but looked like full-size trees. All shapes and sizes. Each tree was unique, just like individuals. I looked around for someone that I assumed would be Asian, but a man with a 3D beard and coveralls came up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Mike. Can I help you?" One of the first rules of leadership: don't make assumptions about what a leader, mentor, or mentee is supposed to look like. Mike Redgrave was the owner of Full Moon Bonsai. He worked all the cultural festivals in Atlanta, but his home and his bonsai nursery was in East Cobb. Now, the bad news was that almost of his little trees had big price tags. The good news was that the nursery was behind his house in East Cobb, where I lived. So we worked out a work for trees arrangement, and that began a 20-year mentor-mentee leadership relationship. Let me interject a point about the mentor-mentee relationship right now. Mentors out there, if someone wants to learn something that you are skilled at, volunteer to be their mentor immediately. Don't wait for them. Reach out. Most of us don't know what we don't know. And we can read books, watch YouTube videos, or try on our own. But nothing beats someone who has gone ahead of us to light the way. The art of bonsai is pretty simple. Select your raw materials or tree, pot, cut, wire, and then wait for 20 years. There's a saying in bonsai circles: in 2 to 3 years, that's going to be a fantastic tree. So the first thing you do is select a young tree and evaluate it for the bonsai process. This may be a cutting, seedling, or small tree. Almost any plant with bark can be used for bonsai. But nobody is 100% sure if the raw material will ever make it to being a full mature bonsai. The spark that can possibly be recognized about that potential tree is recognized by perhaps only a very few. Recently I had one of my mentees, Ron Hawkins, came up screaming through my driveway in his van with one of the ugliest Douglas fir trees I had ever seen. "Dave, doesn't it look great?" "Yeah, if you like dead sticks." I said, "No, I can see it. It has potential." "Like the Charlie Brown Christmas tree?" I thought Ron's tree was going to die in winter or not make it through the bonsai process. However, out of pure spite, the tree decided to live and is now thriving in Ron's home. Now, the second step in the bonsai process is to pot, to find the right environment. In Japan, there are bonsai masters, so it follows there would have to be bonsai pottery masters just to keep up with the supply. Their pots can be large or small, ornate or simple, but however they are produced, there's a lot of detail in each one, and the quality control is exceptionally strict. Go and search YouTube for the city of Tokoname. They have been specializing in bonsai pots for over 900 years. You can see videos of the details that go into making just one single pot. And if it doesn't pass inspection, it's broken. The first time I saw this, I almost hyperventilated and passed out. It takes days to craft a single bonsai pot. Novice eyes can see a beautiful pot, but an expert can detect one small flaw, even on the bottom. And if it's found, boom, the wooden mallet comes down. Now, I don't buy defective seconds. I mean, I go to secondhand stores. But how much detail we put into the efforts of working with other people? These pots can be very expensive, and the pots are selected based on the shape of the tree, not the tree selected for the pot. Trees that have more delicate features are considered feminine and usually placed in smaller or round pots. Trees that are more angular or larger are placed in regular, rectangular, or square pots and are considered masculine. In short, what I'm trying to say is one size does not fit all. The same is true for people and organizations. The reality of life is not everyone is going to be a great fit for every organization. Trying to fit into a specific corporate culture is like trying to plant a 1-foot tall tree in a 6-inch round pot. This is something we all have to learn the hard way from time to time. Not everybody is going to like you. At best, you can try to work in harmony. But better yet, find a place where you are wanted and appreciated. You may have a great idea or be able to picture what a little tree might look like in 20, 30, or 40 years, but it's the tree itself that makes that decision. The same is true with most courses or organizations that teach leadership. Again, we can make judgments about who we think will succeed or who will fail, but in the end, the responsibility falls to the individual or individual tree. Love and attention don't hurt either. To be successful, we have to interact with both bonsai trees and people in a way that allows them to respond positively, even when we have to take corrective action, or in the bonsai's case, the wiring process. The wiring process causes the branches to grow in a certain direction. The wiring process tells the plant which way it needs to go, very much like evaluations and feedback do in corporate America. The wires can't be too tight or kept on too long. You can't force a plant to immediately conform or work or behave in a way that you want it to on a short-term basis. If you do, you can damage the plant permanently. People are the same way. You can encourage, but voluntolding doesn't last very long. Push too hard, someone leaves. Guide and direct, and they flourish. Now, by this time you may be asking yourself this question: does this guy talk to plants? Of course I do. I call them by their names. Little Mama, Baby, Hugo, that ugly maple tree that Mike sold me, Phoebe, Spike, and all the rest have names. And yes, they talk to me also. Maybe not necessarily in words all the time, but they all respond. If your plant asks for water, you give it to them. Same thing in leadership. You may have to give resources to those you lead and what they need to get to the next level or stage of development. You want to give them a formulated fish emulsion that's designed for optimal growth, or just cover them in 5 pounds of manure. It's true for the individual and the individual tree. Now, little trees do not stay with us forever. They can live a very long time, but some we sell, some we trade, and some die, no matter what. The only constant in life is change. And you will not stay in the same leadership position forever, even if it seems like it. The hardest part of leaving a leadership position and passing the torch so someone else can lead is just that, passing the torch. However, the leadership process itself and time makes way for new leadership, even if we would rather not step down. At the beginning of the Great Recession, which wasn't so great for me, I was politely let go from my position as a department head. Now, I knew exactly what to do. I headed over to Mike's house with the nursery on the back. So when things got tough for me, or Mike was trying to hide from his wife, Mary Beth, we would meet at his nursery and work out our problems by taking care of the trees there. Sometimes we sat in silence to trim and wire trees. And sometimes we sat in silence and drank as we trimmed and wired trees. And sometimes we talked and drank as we trimmed and wired trees. However, whenever we talked and drank as we trimmed and wired trees, you could tell by looking at the trees that we had talked and drank as we trimmed and wired trees. When I showed up, I was still wearing my suit. Mike was working on some junipers when I had arrived, watering his morning's work with a huge watering can. "Hey, what's up, Dave?" I told him I'd been let go. And I was still hot about it. You know, I helped start that company from nothing. I hired people that I've got to leave behind. You know, they are going to miss me so much. Oh, is that right now? Give me your hand. Now, I thought he was going to shake my hand, but when I extended it, he grabbed my wrist and plunged my hand all the way down to the elbow in that large watering can. Then he had this crazy look in his eyes. I thought maybe he had started drinking without me. My jacket and my shirt was soaked all the way up to the elbow. I asked him, have you lost your ever-loving plant happy mind? Or maybe you've been sniffing too much fertilizer? No, the question is, have you lost all common sense? That water is like your old company. Now take your hand out. You see a big hole where your hand used to be? You don't, do you? When you leave, you're going to be replaced, and unfortunately, you'll soon be forgotten. It's good to have a friend like me who'll be honest with you, isn't it? If you were to leave, hell, I'd miss you. Now take that wet jacket off and help me finish these junipers. That one there, 2-3 years, going to be fantastic. Often when you leave an organization, you may think an organization won't be able to function without you. However, that's not really true. They're going to be fine. The bigger question is, will you? When I left the military after 10 years, I had a complete loss of identity. This happens for a lot of people when they leave any organization. Now from that scene, let's fast forward the clock 9 years. After many bonsai shows and plants, I got a call from my cell phone. I recognized the number immediately. Hey, Mike, what are you up to? Wait, oh, Mary Beth. This is Mike's number. So why are you crying? What's wrong? Mike's dying? I just talked to him before he went into that sinus operation last week. What? Oh, it wasn't just an infection. It was stage 4 sinus cancer? Inoperable? I'm so sorry. How is he? Going in and out of consciousness. But he's communicating through hand squeezes. Mary Beth said the local priest had already administered last rites and that Mike didn't want anyone to come see him the way he was. After I hung up, I considered the wishes of someone that I considered close friends for over 20 years. And then I headed right over to Mike's place. He didn't look real good. Mary Beth said he could hear, but he wasn't really moving. I asked her about funeral arrangements, and she said that Mike wanted to be cremated. I whispered into her ear so Mike couldn't hear, but I'll be doggone if she didn't whisper right into Mike's ear, and I could almost see him squeeze her hand gently. I left. At the reception of Mike's funeral, Mary Beth was surrounded by 3 of her girlfriends who had come up from Florida to be with her. There was an exceptionally tall man in front of me in the receiving line. Now, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, necessarily, but I could hear her and the gentleman talking about bonsai trees. When I get up my turn, I said, so Mary Beth, who's the distinguished older gentleman? Oh, that's Hubert. He's one of Mike's friends. Now, after 20 years, I thought I knew all of Mike's friends. Dave, if you could, would you please come over to the house after the reception? There's something I'd like to do for me and my girlfriends over at the nursery. An hour later, different suit, Mary Beth and her 3 friends popped out of the house with several bottles of wine. Dave, I told my girls to pick out some raw materials and that you might trim, wire, and pick out an appropriate pot for each plant. Then she handed me Mike's toolbox with all the materials that I need to complete the task. And she looked at me for a long time. I told her I'd be honored to do it. As I wired the last tree, I realized Mike, my mentor and close friend, was really gone. And in some ways, I had just stepped up to take his place. Then Mary Beth placed a mature bonsai tree on Mike's workbench and then took out a small container and sprinkled some of Mike's ashes on the plants. What I had whispered in her ear, and she had told Mike, was that maybe some of his ashes should go into the plants that were his favorites. See, Mike was only half right. When we leave an organization or a team, our place may be filled. However, whatever we give our lives to, we often leave a piece of our hearts behind. Now, no one may actually know this, But I believe a part of us goes on with everyone that we've had the pleasure of serving with. Then, through the nursery, came the very tall and distinguished man that I'd seen at the funeral. He looked at the plant Mary Beth had just given me. Why, that's a fine example of Japanese Arakawa maple. That's the only maple tree with a rough bark. Now, unless you're a continual winner at your local trivia night, that's a pretty esoteric knowledge. I looked at the man. Who are you and how do you know that? My name's Hubert. I sold that tree to Mike 7 or 8 years ago. I was Mike's friend. I was also one of his bonsai teachers. Mary Beth said you might be in need of some guidance, maybe a little teaching yourself. I'd like to be your friend, too. Yes, in 2 to 3 years, that Arakawa maple is going to be an excellent tree. But in 20 years, why, it's going to win Best in Show here in Atlanta. He said it like he was going to be there to see it. You see, Hubert was 83 years old when I first met him. 83? Going on 30. He still works a full-time job, paints portraits, creates silver jewelry, and has one of the largest private bonsai collections here in Cobb County. I wouldn't be surprised that Hubert sees that tree actually win first place in show, the Atlanta Botanical Garden Show. Ladies and gentlemen, my next bonsai mentor had arrived right on cue. Things end. People change. Organizations change. You know what? Life goes on. Look around you. Take a moment to mentally thank those who have been your leaders, your mentors, and your mentees. The leadership of this organization will rotate soon. I will wish everyone well. Be a mentor. Seek out a mentor. Ignite that fire within, not only for yourself, but for those around you. Find your place in this garden called life. And while you may be great leaders now, in 2 to 3 years, you will be excellent.